Izuku stared at the blue-haired woman whose lips were currently pressed against his own. Her eyes were shut and her entire body was bathed in fading purple light. He felt her smile against his lips as she pulled away, their lips clinging to each other ever so softly. She placed a hand on his chest and met his eyes. "Negire," he all but whispered into the night, still stunned by what had just happened. When he told her how he felt, how he was fully prepared to return her feelings, he hadn't expected a kiss so abruptly. She was right, things would be more difficult. "Thank you for the dance, Izuku." Negire smiled, tilting her head to the side, her eyes fluttering down to his lips before she pushed away, slipping out of his arms easily. "I'll see you tomorrow, okay?" He watched as she floated to the door, her bare feet not once touching the ground. "Yeah, good night, Negire." She paused at her door. He could still feel the linger of that kiss, and her smile made his lips tingle. "Good night, Izuku." Her door shut with a click, and he stood there for a few breaths, just letting that one singular event play in his mind. His own stunned, stuttering confession, Negire's calm happiness, her persistent unhidden nature that allowed her to pursue things without worry. A squeal came from Negire's room. Apparently, she was really happy. With a growing smile on his face, he headed off to his own room and went to bed thinking about the kiss he shared with Negire. XXXX. When he woke up that morning, his mind was still on that kiss, his lips tingling with the ghost of her touch. And it really only served to make him realize how different Negire was. He had kissed and been kissed before, but it was hard not to notice just how different it felt with Negire. Her single kiss was worth a lot more than those odd one-night stands. I wonder if he was stopped short as he headed towards the kitchen only for the girl's door to open up, and a very naked Mei Hatsum walk out with just a towel on her head. He blinked, then he pinched his nose covering his face and let out a sigh. "Mei, put some clothes on." "Huh? Oh, sure thing, sensei, forgot you were here." She pulled out one of those pins she had in her hair from last night. Where did she keep it? She clicked on the tip and a blue light covered her body, slowly taking on the form of a set of street clothes. "There, all better, now I need to head on out to the expo. There are so many people I need to show my babies to." She attempted to run but he caught her by the arm. "Mei, what is that? And was it what you used to dress last night?" "Oh, it's a hard light hologram. I made it yesterday morning with some of the equipment I found laying around in a lab." She beamed at him, holding up the small pin for him to see. "It even feels like real clothes when people touch it." "So you were naked last night if it wasn't for this pin?" Honestly, he'd be amazed by the fact that she not only made something so impressive but did it in less than 6 hours if he wasn't so busy being concerned with being her teacher and her safety. "No, I had underwear on. Still working on that bit." With a sigh, he pushed her back into her room. "Put real clothes on, Mei, then go show the world your genius." By some miracle, Mei listened. "Sure thing, sensei, but it's so not cost efficient anymore. With this, I'll never have to do laundry or dish." He shut the door and sighed. Why did he have to take the insane technophile to Island again? Oh right, she was an insane technophile that made him cool gadgets. Opening his eyes, he saw Negire nursing a cup of tea as she stood at the entrance of the kitchen. The wry smile on her face quickly turned into a fake pout. "What?" He pushed off the door, staring at her as he realized what she was wearing. A tank top that was cut low enough so that the upper curves of her breasts were visible. It was loose around her and rolled up just high enough to one side that he could see just the smallest glimpse of her stomach. Her pajama pants straddled her hips and just made her look so comfortable. And really sexy. Really sexy. He blushed as her fake pout vanished and the smile returned. "What?" "Oh, nothing." She pushed a bit of her hair out of her face. Her smile persisted through a quick sip of her drink. "I was going to tease you about how you saw Mei naked before me. That was an accident. But then I saw how you looked at her, and then how you looked at me, and I realized I really don't have anything to worry about." She took the smuggest sip of tea he'd ever seen and wandered back into the kitchen. He could hear her humming with every step. "You look thirsty, Izuku. You want something to drink?" Once he got over his shock, he followed her into the kitchen and found her looking at different types of tea that they had in stock here. Was he going to have to pay for any of that? "No thanks, I can wait for breakfast." "I wonder." Negire stuck her tongue out at him and winked. He leaned against the counter watching her make another cup of something. "Are you sure it's okay to be flirting with Mei around like that?" "Oh, I'm not worried about Mei, she doesn't care enough to know, let alone tell anyone." She forgets my name half the time anyway, which is super rude, but she's also cute, so it's okay. NEGIRE turned to look at him with her large blue eyes still dancing like they had just kissed. He wanted to do it again. Would she let him? Would she allow him to lean in and kiss her? Right now, for no other reason than to do it again. A door slamming shut alerted him to May exiting the room she shared with NEGIRE. She stopped in front of him and twirled. She was fully dressed and she had that pin with her again. It was sparkling like it was last night. I'm dressed, sensei, can I go now? The expo is going to start soon. Hey May, I kissed Izuku last night. NEGIRE. May just raised an eyebrow and shrugged. Okay, who are you again? NEGIRE just smiled at him like she had just proven her point. He sighed and looked at May, more specifically the very glowing and very unusual hairpiece she was ever so fond of these days. I'd invite you to go to breakfast, but I feel like you'd say no. May nodded. He took a step closer and grabbed the pin from her hair. At least she had on underwear this time. Besides, you need to put on real clothes first. May made a noise that sounded like a gremlin and walked back to her room, muttering about slowing the progress of science. A moment later she was out the door fully dressed in real clothing, which she demonstrated by putting on her shirt and socks as she walked out the door. NEGIRE hummed to his side, swaying as she looked at him, a soft smile on her face. So, what's the plan for today? Izuku. A chill ran up his spine when she said his name like that. He probably shouldn't let her know about that, if she didn't already. Well, first breakfast with Dave, All Might, Melissa, and probably Mirio, then I don't know, what do you have in mind? He asked, knowing full well that whatever plans they made were not going to matter once NEGIRE decided to do something else, and that he was going to spend the day with her. What I really want to do is probably something saved for night time. Something for the night. Yep. After we get back here. What is it? NEGIRE tilted her head to the side, her eyes sparkling at him. That's a secret. But I promise you'll enjoy it. What did it mean? Was she talking about the hot tub? Or something more? What was more? Sex? Didn't she say she was jealous he saw May naked first? Was she that bold? They were barely a couple. They were barely on kissing terms. There was so much to consider. You're cute when your head is exploding, Izuku. She finished her drink and spun on her feet while swinging her arms out wide. Now I'm going to go get ready. We have to meet the others for breakfast soon, right? XXXX. Izuku bit his lip as he tried really hard not to look at NEGIRE any more than he already had. Why was she just suddenly so much more attractive to him? Was it because she wasn't wearing her school uniform at the moment so he could just enjoy her without that reminder? Or was it just the lingering effects of that kiss? Or maybe he was just being honest with himself. Her usual free blue hair that cascaded down her back was now confined into a ponytail that was held in place by a green hair tie, giving him a great view of the soft curvatures of her nape and upper back. She was wearing a simple white sundress that ended just at her knees with a few orange flowers on it. She leaned forward just a bit, handing something to someone, and he caught a glimpse of something on her back. Something that wasn't skin or fabric. Did NEGIRE have a tattoo? Probably not something he should bring up now. A kick from under the table and he saw Melissa smiling at him. She shot a glance at NEGIRE, then back at him, her face lighting up as she realized what was happening. Without speaking she asked him if they were a couple. He could really only shrug. Apparently, that was all the confirmation she needed as her smile grew. I am here. All Might announced as he walked into their private room. A simple t-shirt and jeans were strained by his muscular form. Casually late for breakfast. Mirio stood beside him and matched his heroic pose. And I had to remind him of the time. And Melissa's smile grew even bigger as she looked at Mirio. Okay, there was something there. Maybe NEGIRE hadn't been crazy. It's all right, Toshi. We haven't ordered yet and most of us are used to your poor sense of time. Dave laughed from his seat, completely unaware that his daughter was crushing hard on Mirio. And it appeared that the feelings were mutual. Maybe he'd have to ask NEGIRE. Hey, Izuku. NEGIRE pulled on his sleeve while holding the menu in her hands. Help me decide what to eat. I've never had, like, any of these foods. Like, what's a short stack? Or a Belgian waffle? What about biscuits and gravy? It all sounds good, but I can't eat that much. Well, I can eat a lot, but I heard American meals are huge. He could all but picture the drool sliding out of her mouth as she looked at the menu. Well, that depends on what you're in the mood for. If you want something sweet, pancakes or waffles are good, but if you want something more balanced, the bacon, eggs and potatoes combo is hard to beat. Something sweet. She scooted closer, leaning in to share the menu with him. Oh, that says strawberries, right? Yep. Waffles tend to come with fruit. Her eyes lit up and he knew exactly what she was going to eat. Their food came after 30 minutes of chatting and just being friendly with each other. He'd missed these family-like moments with Dave and Melissa, but it also reminded him of when he took the big 3+UU out for ramen. Maybe he should do that more often once they got back. Bank account permitting. Negire's eyes lit up when their food came and she slapped him on the chest at least twice before grabbing his shirt in pure excitement. She all but melted when she took that first whipped cream-filled bite of strawberry goodness. XXXX. A movie night. The big super secret event that Negire had planned was a movie night with him. He was more relieved than anything else. It wasn't that he wasn't very attracted to Negire, but if she had been planning for something on the intimate side of things, then he would have had to refuse. It was just too soon for something like that. Wasn't it? As soon as they had gotten back from the expo and dinner with Dave and the others, she had forced him to get into his comfortable pajamas and then vanished into her room. He had heard the shower turn off at least 30 minutes ago. He leaned forward, taking another bite of popcorn. It was still warm, no doubt due to some science magic in the bowl. As he did, he looked up and found his jaw unwilling to open, as she had done so many times of late. Negire had stolen his breath away. Her hair was bound in the same ponytail it had been in, but instead of falling behind her, it rested over her shoulder. She was wearing a tight pink and purple t-shirt that showed off her curves and ended just below her belly button. The same pajama pants she had on earlier was still riding on her hips. Oh, popcorn? Good choice. Negire jumped onto the other part of the couch, then back down onto the floor before sliding past the table, taking a bit of popcorn and sitting down right next to him. Not just next to him, but right next to him. As close as she could get. Ready for the movie? Yeah, he said softly, nodding as he sat back down. What are we watching? Oh, a couple of movies that have been on my to-watch list for a while. A silent voice, and The Phantom Thieves of Heart, and a few others. Relax, they're not all romance. She snatched the remote off the table and started the first movie before leaning over his lap and grabbing a blanket to cover both of them before resting the popcorn just within arm's reach on the couch. Even when he thought she was settled, she continued to squirm, moving closer to him. He opened up his arm and she rested her head on his shoulder while her legs rested on top of his. She turned to look up at him and wiggled her hips. Comfy. He shifted a bit, leaning a bit further back into the couch, then nodded. Yeah, I think so. Is this what you had in mind? Yep. I knew you would be great at cuddling. She bit her lips, looking at him. Wanna know the best part about this position though? What? It's really easy to do this. She twisted upwards just a bit and kissed him. This one lasted longer than the first, and as she pulled away, he chased after her, stealing another kiss. Negire squealed in delight, her hands pulling on his shirt as she leaned into that stolen kiss. They watched 3 movies that night, and he really didn't know what any of them were about. Waking up, Negire knew exactly where she was. She was on the couch, covered by a blanket, curled up next to Izuku. Her head rested on his chest and their legs were tangled. Her lips still tingled from that makeout session they had last night. Laying next to Izuku like this was the maximum level of comfort. She didn't even care that her foot was partially out from under the covers. All that really mattered was that Izuku's arms were around her. Sighing into his chest, she moved just that slightest bit closer. They should sleep in today and do absolutely nothing but just cuddle and sleep. That sounded great. Izuku stirred, just a bit, and moved his hand along her back. She could feel him through the shirt she had worn last night, and it was nice. He wasn't the strongest person in the world. Heck, she could probably beat him in an arm wrestling contest. But he was so kind, gentle, and just great. Yeah, great. Huh. She heard him say as he stirred more. He was waking up. That probably meant no sleeping in. His hand patted her back again while his other hand slowly let go over her shoulder. Shit. She wanted to roll her eyes. What was going through his head this early in the morning? Couldn't he just enjoy this while it lasted? They were basically a couple on Island, and couples cuddled a lot. At least any relationship she was going to have has a lot of cuddling. She snuggled closer into Izuku and then propped her chin up on his chest, glaring at him. What are you doing? Negire, I just woke up like this. He was stuttering, and he looked really cute with his bedhead. Wait, he always had bedhead. But this was like double bedhead. She stretched her hand out and cupped Izuku's cheek before pulling herself up. She kissed him. What number was this? A lot? She lost count after 4. But there had been a lot more than 4 last night. When her fingers reached his hair, she broke off from the kiss. It was greasy, but fun to touch. Izuku, whatever you're nervous about, don't be. Oh, he already relaxed when she kissed him, but his eyes rolled in his head as she played with his hair. His hand returned to the back of her waist, the other brushed through her hair. Then this is okay. A smile crept onto her face and she hummed, tilting her head to one side then the other. This is more than okay, Izuku. It's really nice waking up to you. Really the only way it could be better is if they were sharing a bed. Oh, that's good. I like it too. He continued to comb her hair as a comfortable silence drew between them. So, now what? Well, going back to sleep feels out of reach right now. So, why don't one of their phones interrupted her. Looking over at the table, it was Izuku's slightly bigger phone vibrating with a picture of a blonde girl on the screen. He was lucky it was Melissa. And that she wasn't the jealous type. Why don't you answer that? She pushed off of him. I'll go take a shower and we can figure out what to do after that. Okay. She gave him a quick kiss and all but skipped to the bathroom. Or rather, she would have skipped had it not been for the fact that she floated the whole way. About halfway into her shower, Izuku knocked on the door. It was a soft knock and that just made her jump all the more. She gasped, placing a hand over her chest as the warm water poured over her, her hair completely lathered with shampoo. Yes. That was Melissa, Izuku said just loud enough to be heard. She wants to hang out with me for a bit before the expo starts. I think she wants to talk about Mirio, so do you think we can meet up again later? Sure. She smiled as she sent a bit of her quirk through her hair, quickly removing the shampoo and conditioner. 1 rinse down, 1 to go. I'll hang out with Mirio today and then we can meet up later for the fireworks show. Oh yeah, that's tonight? Okay. Sounds good, I'll text you. She was so jealous of Izuku's ability to take a shower and be out the door in 5 minutes. XXXX hey there Melissa, Izuku smiled as he ran up to his little sister. She was sitting at her favorite cafe, a cup of tea already in front of her. How have things been going? She pushed a strand of blonde hair behind her ear and smiled for a second before it faded. It's going good, and thanks for coming. I wanted to talk to you about some stuff. Okay, I figured as much when you called me out here. He took the seat across from her and placed both hands on the table. Is this about you and Mirio? Her face turned red. Well, kind of, partially, but that can wait for a second. Melissa took a deep breath and sighed. How serious are you with her? Pretty serious. Why? The memory from this morning put a smile on his face and he was already looking forward to seeing NEGIRE again. Okay, that's good. I think. Well, I just wanted to know how you two got together. Like, how did she tell you or how did you figure it out? Did you tell her? How did it go? How long have you two been a couple? What made you like her, and are you asking so you can tell Mirio how you feel? She jolted in her seat, her face growing even redder by the second. Is it that obvious? Big time. I thought you and Mirio had already talked about this with how you act around him. He leaned back smiling at her. It felt great to finally be in the know about something like this. He likes you too, by the way, at least NEGIRE says he does. Oh, well that's good. Great. She bit her lip, wiggling in her seat. But, can you please tell me how you and NEGIRE got together? It might help me confess to him. I know he's leaving soon, but I just want to let him know how I feel before he leaves. I mean, it's nothing special. NEGIRE was the one that told me she had a crush on me and that she was going to make me fall in love with her. She blinked at him. It's not as creepy as it sounds. But it wasn't until recently that we actually got together. And by recently, the night that we got here. So a haul of 2 days. He shrugged. Sorry, it's not as exciting as you probably thought it was. Melissa just sighed. I'm really not surprised by that at all. She placed her elbow on the table and rested her chin on it. Still, you two are so cute together, I'm almost jealous. Relax, just tell Mirio how you feel, he'll accept your feelings without question. I bet that NEGIRE would even tell him to confess. I think he likes you a lot. It was also nice that he trusted Mirio with Melissa. And nice that having a boyfriend in Japan might encourage Melissa to visit him there. What if she needed a place to stay? He needed a better apartment. Oh, well, do you know of any support items he could need? I could maybe make him some underwear that works with his quirk. Melissa's face fell. XXXX Negire stared at Mirio as he stood opposite of her on the thin purple platform that was all that separated them from falling into the water down below. Like the goofball he was, he had his tongue sticking out of his mouth. He was wearing a simple pair of board shorts that barely reached his knees. "Wanna make a bet?" she asked, grinning at him. The second day of the expo was far closer to a carnival than she had thought, with there being an aquatic sports arena for the pros to enjoy. It was designed for, well, she didn't really know what it was designed for, but they were using it to have fun. It was a shame that Izuku wasn't the first to see her in her white bikini. She did buy it for him. But messing with Mirio was fun. Mirio flexed on the pole, displaying his greater strength and agility, even going so far as to do a backflip. He was such a show-off. "Are you sure you wish to make a bet with me, Negire?" "You bet," she smiled at him. "If you fall in the water you have to ask Melissa out on a date," she said low enough that only Mirio could hear and the crowd of people cheering wouldn't. His eyes went wide, and his face went red. So that's how he looked when he was crushing. "Whatever do you mean? I assure you, my feelings for Melissa are dash. I never said anything about your feelings," she teased, pointing a finger at him and shot a beam of energy at him just strong enough to poke him. "Just that when you end up taking a dip you have to ask her out, maybe to the fireworks tonight." An embarrassed Mirio was a sight to behold. Oh my, when had she become so sadistic? "Fine, but if you end up in the water." Mirio tapped on his chin. "You must clean mine and Tamaki's apartment." She nodded and the light went green, signaling the start of their challenge. She ran towards Mirio and he charged at her. The rules for the contest were simple: first person off the platform lost. No quirks allowed, just a pure fun battle of strength. But she never said anything about winning. Just before Mirio reached her she darted to the side, her feet leaving the platform as she floated in the air. Mirio's shocked face was priceless as he realized too late, his momentum causing him to slip on the beam. He hit the water pretty hard. The crowd erupted in laughter and they called Mirio as the winner. Because she cheated. Worth. So, she fluttered over to him, stopping just over the water and hovering there. "Do you need date ideas?" "That was cheating, Negire." "Nope. It was clever use of my quirk to get the desired outcome I wanted." She blasted the water next to his face, splashing him a bit. "Okay fine, it was cheating but you still went into the WA-. He splashed her. Negire couldn't help but smile as she looked down at Mirio and Melissa laughing, holding hands, and just being absolutely totally adorable. On their first actual date. Sure, there had been some reluctance over the distance of their relationship. But the two had a natural chemistry that just put a smile on everyone's face. She really shouldn't be looking at them right now. Her smile only grew as she turned to look at Izuku. He stepped gingerly over to her, holding 2 drinks in his hands. Everything about this trip had been wonderful, and somehow tonight had been that much better. They had had dinner as a couple and had done so many things that just felt right. Now they were moments away from the fireworks show for the closing ceremony of the expo. It marked the halfway point of their stay here. Soon this dream would have to stop, if only for a little while. Going back would be hard, but she didn't want to put Izuku's job in jeopardy. He was a good teacher, a great teacher. "Something wrong?" Izuku asked, offering her the cup. His smile was soft, warm, and made her aware of her frown. Just looking at him, at the way his green eyes looked at her like she wasn't just special, but special to him, and her smile returned in the blink of an eye. "Oh, just thinking that our vacation is halfway over with." "Oh," Izuku said, softly, his face scrunching up as he joined her on the balcony. "Right, I almost forgot about that. I'd love to find some way to stay here with you. Maybe ask Dave and Melissa to let us stay in my old room." He gave a soft sigh and twirled his drink a bit. "But I have to join the first years for their summer camps. And I have to report in with Ryoko." She grabbed onto his arm and pulled him into a soft kiss, letting the night air waft over them as she felt him smile into their kiss before pulling away. "That's why we should make the most out of the time we have, right? Or at least enough to satisfy us both for like 8 months. I can agree to that." His arm wrapped around her waist, just as the first of the fireworks whistled into the sky. The whole world seemed to draw silent as the city lights all began to darken, leaving only the stars and the moon to give light. A moment later and the sky lit up in a brilliant red that seemed to twist upwards, and a stem of green extending down towards the horizon, a beautiful rose with its petals turned in. Just as those lights faded they exploded outwards, blooming like a beautiful rose that hung in the sky. 2, 3, 4 fireworks flew into the sky, the stem was cut, and a beautiful woman with blonde hair was now wearing it in her hair. Wow, she said breathlessly, watching as that woman shrunk, revealing her blue dress and being joined by a faceless man. They danced and twisted in the air, moving about the entire island. It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as you. She felt Izuku's knuckle against her cheek, sending a shiver down her spine as she absolutely melted at his words. The fireworks seemed to stop, and instead just looking at Izuku stole her breath away. The world fell away from her until it was just her and Izuku. The line was cheesy, so very cheesy, but it was the most romantic she had ever heard, and it made her heart do some very funny things. She tried to speak, but could only whisper a laugh as she enjoyed Izuku's touch. When did you become so romantic? Izuku's smile vanished and they were bathed in the light of another set of fireworks, this one in the shape of All Might. Oh, I was just thinking and said that. Apparently, she could get even happier than she had been. With her heart racing and her cheeks flushed she grabbed his hand and kissed him on the cheek. Make the most of it, huh? XXXX 3 days ago, they had started dating. 2 She had kissed him good night. 1 And they slept next to each other after a night filled with kissing and giggling. And tonight? Tonight she was going to be greedy. She wanted everything from him. The moment they had returned from their hotel suite, the magic of the night, the fireworks, the dinner, Izuku being so very sweet, she had started to kiss him. Aggressively. She had him against the wall, her hands fumbling with the buttons of his shirt. His hands were tied on her hips, holding her against him as he returned those mind-numbing kisses. Each one made her want more. A lot more. She knew exactly what they were doing tonight. And it didn't involve that hot tub. She pulled at the button of his green shirt, undoing the top. One while her eyes were still locked with his. Another button. Then another. Part of her wanted him to stop her. At least then she'd know her attentions were clear to him. Negire. His breath was hot and warm against her ear and sent a shiver down her spine. He kissed her cheekbone, which burned with passion. It was like everywhere he was touching had become erogenous. If we don't stop now, I don't think we'll be able to stop. Then don't. She pulled away, looking him in the eye. We've waited long enough, don't you think? We're more than compatible, so, please, if only for tonight, if only for these next few days, don't hold back. There was a pause, and Izuku had stopped, his breath frozen in his heart, and she could feel his heartbeat against her face. She all but screamed when Izuku pulled her towards his room. Their room for the next few days. She kissed him again the moment the door was shut. The remaining few buttons of his shirt were gone, revealing his bare chest. His hands worked quickly on her dress, pushing the straps down the side and undoing the buttons on the back. It fell to the floor, revealing the matching white frilly underwear that was borderline lingerie. Wow, Izuku said. He stared at her with a blank look on his face as he just took in her sight. She wasn't embarrassed. If anything, she was emboldened by how dumbfounded he looked. Grabbing his hand with both of hers, she walked back towards the bed, biting her lip in anticipation. You haven't seen anything yet. She spun with him, pushing her chest against his as she removed the last bit of his shirt and kissed him, holding him against the edge of the bed. He touched her gently, almost as though he was afraid to touch her bare skin. I can touch you, right? He asked softly when they broke the kiss for a moment. Why was he so cute? Laughing, she pushed him onto the bed and looked him in the eyes. That's the point, Izuku. You can even make me more naked. His touch went from gentle to rough as he explored her exposed skin, especially around her waist. Only her bra stopped his hands from moving forward as they continued to kiss on the bed. There was a tug and she thought he might be having problems removing it. Then she felt her bra slid free from her back and down her arms. Smiling at him, she took it off and tossed it to the side. They kissed. Again, her hands tangled in his hair. His were pressed into her breast while the other was grabbing at her butt. It felt so good when he touched her like that. The feral, almost silent groan that escaped Izuku only made her all the more eager for this moment. He was enjoying it too. He was enjoying it a lot. With her on top kissing him, removing his pants was somewhat challenging as she fiddled with his belt. His hands glided along her body down to his belt as he assisted her. Within moments his pants and underwear joined her dress on the ground. and her panties soon after. He was hard, very hard, with a good length and a pleasant shape to him. He was going to feel good inside of her. He groaned when she gave him the lightest touch, feeling how warm and hot he was while looking down at him. His hands were on her hips. "You're beautiful, NEGIRE," he said softly, his eyes locked onto hers. As if she wasn't already super horny, he just had to say something like that. "You're sweet, Izuku. Are you ready?" The slightest nod was all she needed. She maneuvered him into her, the tip piercing her for a second stole her breath away, and as she continued downwards that stretching sensation that was almost like tearing spread through her. Inch by inch she took him until at long last he was completely inside of her. A perfect fit. Smiling she felt the pain fade and the pleasure begin. Rocking her hips from side to side she could feel him touching all the right places inside of her. A groan from Izuku made her bite her lips as his hands continued to knead her breasts. Already she could feel an orgasm building inside of her. It was like flying without using her quirk, just floating there, and a moan escaped her. "You feel so good," she said softly, leaning forward while her hips continued to move up and down, his own motions matching her own with careful precision. She kissed him. His lips, his fingers, that part of him that was inside of her. It was also so stimulating that she could barely hold back anymore. Her moan turned into a high-pitched squeal when his hands moved to her hips, increasing both of their paces. With more strength than she thought he had, Izuku sat up, pulling her with him, and continued to bounce her on his hips. The position shifted changed things in a wonderful way. She wrapped her legs around his waist, hands on his shoulders, and her head was flung back in pleasure. He slowed just long enough to kiss her nipple, sucking on it softly before doubling the pace once again, the air cooling her new wet nipple and overwhelming her entire body. With one last squeal, she experienced her first orgasm, only for it to be joined by a second one moments later as she moved to kiss him softly. But still, he moved, he was still hard. "NEGIRE," Izuku whispered. "I'm going to come. You can come inside." She held on to him, the strength to move fading from her limbs. "I have an IUD, it's fine. Come inside me." He didn't nod, only groaned and increased his pace again. Then she felt his climax, her body shaking as he filled her completely. Together they fell back onto the bed, and she rolled off of him with a satisfyingly sloppy plop. She reached over and grabbed his hand, sweat covering their bodies. "That was great, Izuku." She squirmed closer to him, wrapping his arms around her as she hugged his chest. He decided that he wanted to continue to grope her, which was more than fine. "Really, really great." He kissed her on her forehead as they just basked in the afterglow of sex. "Now what?" "Well, either we can go take a shower together, or we can turn on that TV, watch some movies, make out some more, have some more sex, and then take a shower together." She mewed under his kisses. "Either way, I'm sleeping in your bed tonight." He laughed softly, his hand running up and down her back. "I like the latter." "Me too." Reaching over, she found the remote to the slightly smaller TV in Izuku's room and began to flip through the list of movies, putting on the first one that looked even remotely interesting. Not that they'd be watching much of it. "Hey, NEGIRE, I was wondering, why do you have butterfly wings on your back?" His fingers brushed over her tattoo, a small reminder of Yuya's influence on her life. Well, not really. Yuya had told her not to do it, or to get something smaller, but she had wanted the wings. "They're fairy wings. I got them when I learned to fly, as a reminder of how much you influenced me." She nuzzled up against him, kissing him softly and feeling that tingle go up and down her spine. His kisses were so addictive. "Do you like them?" He laughed. Izuku stared at the blue-haired woman whose